In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, February 10th. Monday's earthquake in Turkey and Syria is looking to become one of the deadliest of this decade as the casualty count begins to mount dramatically. Meanwhile, over in the US, authorities there have begun analyzing the suspected Chinese surveillance balloon that their military shot down last Saturday. And in the local entertainment industry, BTS agency HYBE becomes the largest shareholder of K-pop rival SM, having sealed a deal with the firm's founder. The extent of the casualty from Monday's devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria is triggering shockwaves across the globe. The latest tally has the death toll standing at well above 20,000, and pundits believe 10 times as many people remain trapped under the rubble. Our Kim Jong-sil starts us off.
It's the 5th day since the earthquake hit, and the number of dead has increased exponentially. In Türkiye alone, at least 17,000 people are confirmed to have died. In Syria, more than 3,000, according to the officials and Syrian civil rescue team White Helmets. The combined total is more than the number of people who died in the Tohoku earthquake and following tsunami that hit northeastern Japan in 2011. Citing a Turkish earthquake expert, The Economist has reported that the final death toll could be as high as 180,000, as more victims could be found in the following weeks. The so-called golden hour for survival passed after 72 hours, but the rescue teams are still desperately searching for any survivors. Some miraculously are pulled out of the rubble alive, but the destroyed roads and cold weather are hindering rescue efforts. In Türkiye, more than 6,000 buildings have collapsed and 750,000 people are taking refuge in temporary shelters. But even those who survived the earthquake could face a secondary disaster, as cold, hunger, and despair are leading to worsening and horrific conditions, according to the WHO on Thursday. The organization's incident response manager, Robert Holden, said the basics of life, such as water, fuel, and communication supplies, have been disrupted, which could cause more harm to people than the initial disaster. Meanwhile, the delayed government response has angered many in Türkiye. They said even as they could hear cries for help from those that are trapped, there were not enough rescuers, expertise, or support. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan visited the affected area on Wednesday and promised no one would be left homeless. But Reuters cited a Turkish official on Friday as saying the disaster posed very serious difficulties to the long-ruling president in the upcoming election in May. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Staying in Turkey, Korea's relief personnel began emergency operations upon landing on Wednesday and have managed to rescue 5 survivors on day 1. Our foreign affairs correspondent Peunji reports.
Rescue workers pull out a survivor from the rubble of a destroyed building. The South Korean search and rescue team found a man in his mid-70s, only about an hour and a half after they began their operation. So far, the team has rescued 4 more people, including a 2-year-old girl and her 40-year-old father, as well as a 35-year-old woman and a 10-year-old girl. South Korean local media outlets initially reported that the woman was the 2-year-old's mother, but Seoul's foreign ministry later clarified that this was not the case. The ministry also added that other than minor injuries, all of those that were rescued are in good health.
South Korea's foreign ministry will continue to support the Korea disaster relief team and make sure that the government can effectively provide assistance to Türkiye.
Upon Turkey's request, the South Korean team has been in Turkey's southeastern region of Antakya since 5 a.m. Thursday local time. An official from the foreign ministry explained that Antakya is one of the areas hit hardest. Extreme cold weather and the scale of the damage have been making search and rescue operations extremely difficult. The 118-member rescue team left Seoul on Tuesday night, along with search dogs and medical supplies, to help with rescue efforts. The team will continue their operation in Türkiye until February 17th. The South Korean government said it plans to provide aid to Syria as well, once international organizations announce their humanitarian aid needs. Peunji, Arirang News.
In other news, the U.S. has described Wednesday's military parade by North Korea as, quote, propaganda exercises. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price made the reference during a briefing on Thursday. adding that Washington remains committed to a nuclear-free Korean peninsula through dialogue. Back on Wednesday evening, North Korea put on display its latest intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear-capable solid-fuel ballistic missiles to mark the 75th founding anniversary of its army. Now, Mr. Price also reaffirmed the defensive nature of Washington's joint military drills with Seoul and Tokyo. Also in the U.S., analysis is underway by authorities there of the Chinese balloon that they shot down in their territory last Saturday. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation has begun its investigation into China's alleged spy balloon that was shot down last Saturday. According to a senior FBI official on Thursday, so far, the balloon canopy, wires, and a small number of electronic components have been secured, but it's too early to tell the function of the balloon or China's true intent in sending it. Investigators added the lower structure of the balloon, which is presumably equipped with most of the electronic devices, such as monitoring equipment, has not yet been secured. A large part of the wreckage, including the substructure, is still under the water, and the removal operation was temporarily suspended because of high waves. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department said Thursday that China has sent reconnaissance balloons to more than 40 countries around the world to gather intelligence, and the Chinese military is likely the source. The department added that the recently shot-down balloon was equipped with an antenna that could collect communication signals and determine its geographic location. The balloon is also said to be equipped with solar panels capable of generating power to operate multiple intelligence-gathering sensors. In response, Melissa Dalton, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs, was asked at a Senate Appropriation Committee hearing on Wednesday whether it would be necessary to invest in a new system to protect the United States from such reconnaissance balloons. Dalton responded that while in the near term the U.S. is bolstering its security system with the cooperation of Canada, in the long term, investment is needed to further improve the current U.S. system. On Thursday, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution condemning China's use of the suspected spy balloon. The resolution passed unanimously and serves as a symbolic rebuke of the Chinese government, but is, however, not legally binding legislatively. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here in Korea, starting Saturday, the government will resume issuing short-term visas to travelers from China. Now, the short-term visa suspension was scheduled to run until the end of this month, but authorities have decided to lift it early as the number of people testing positive for COVID-19 upon arrival from China has fallen. Speaking of which, COVID-19 testing requirements for those from China remain in place. Now, the travel restrictions on China were adopted back in January in light of a dramatic rebound in COVID-19 infections there, following its sudden shift from a zero-COVID strategy. Neighboring Japan is seeking to slash the number of radioactive substances subject to safety monitoring from the current 64 to 31. Now, this is according to Korean lawmaker Lee Jae-chung, citing government sources, and comes ahead of Japan's planned release of radioactive wastewater from its crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant. Accordingly, lawmaker Lee has also renewed calls for the government here to take action against safety threats to the region's natural resources. Meanwhile, Japan plans to begin releasing the wastewater into the Pacific Ocean sometime in the spring or summer and to continue for decades. There has been a substantial shift in power dynamics in the entertainment industry here as BTS agency HYBE becomes the largest shareholder of K-pop rival SM Entertainment. Our Ian Jin has details.
HYBE is the Korean entertainment agency behind global K-pop phenomenon BTS. On Friday, the agency was officially confirmed to be acquiring a 14.8% stake in its rival K-pop agency SM Entertainment by signing a deal with SM's founder Lee Soo-man. Lee sold 14.8% of his 18.46% holdings. The deal would make HYBE the largest shareholder. SM Entertainment is one of the country's top K-pop agencies behind big-name groups like EXO, Red Velvet, NCT, and aespa. The latest move creates a new monster K-pop power that will be taking K-pop to new heights. Earlier this week on Tuesday, Kakao struck a deal with SM Entertainment to acquire a 9.05% stake. But HYBE's $334.3 million deal with founder and longtime producer Lee Soo-man was the single move making HYBE the new top stakeholder. HYBE called this latest deal a game changer for the impact K-pop will have in the global music industry. SM Entertainment was behind the first-generation Hallyu stars like H.O.T. and BoA, and by becoming their biggest shareholder, HYBE hopes to take global recognition of K-pop to new heights. On Thursday, HYBE's American unit signed a deal to acquire a 100% stake in QC Media Holdings, the parent company of an influential US-based hip-hop label, Quality Control Music. As HYBE expands its global business portfolio, its jump into the global market is also expected to reach even more fans. 이은진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the country's top mobile messenger Kakao posted a 2.4% on-year drop in operating profit last year. According to a regulatory filing released on Friday, Kakao's annual sales rose 15.8% on-year to $5.6 billion, but its operating profit fell to just below $460 million. Now, much of the deficit was marked in the fourth quarter, with operating profits down 5.8% and sales down 0.6%. Kakao has linked the findings to the massive service disruption back in mid-October caused by a fire at its data center. Also, on the local front, tax revenue rose last year on the back of greater corporate earnings and a recovery in the job market. According to the Finance Ministry on Friday, the total tax revenue amounted to nearly $454 billion last year, up some $40 billion compared to the year before. Officials say the tax revenue is driven up by a jump in corporate tax, which soared by roughly $26 billion on year, given better business performances. Income tax also rose by about $12 billion amid growth in the job market. Meanwhile, government spending also surged nearly $50 billion on year to $442 billion last year. The foreign exchange market here is gearing up for some of its biggest changes in more than 2 decades. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho earlier on this Friday spoke of plans to ease regulations. People will be able to transfer $100,000 worth of currency overseas without reporting such intentions. In fact, the overall number of financial transactions that require reporting will be reduced. Securities firms will also be able to take part in the swap market. The latest slash in the red tape is expected to streamline economy-related activities. Pundits say the electric vehicle market will continue to expand this year despite the global doldrums. Now, that being said, our trade correspondent Shin Ha-young takes a look at the current status as well as the prospects for this year. To take a look.
Despite the global economic slowdown, sales of electric vehicles were strong enough to take up about 10% of all new cars sold globally in 2022. According to data released by auto industry researchers LMC Automotive, global sales reached 7.8 million units, showing an impressive on-year increase of 68%. This was mainly due to solid growth in China and Europe. Data released by South Korea's Transport Ministry shows that the country closely matches the global trend with a total of 390,000 registered EVs, up 68.4% from the previous year, while registration of gasoline cars only rose by 2.6%. With a growing preference for eco-friendly spending, sales of electric cars are expected to increase. For this year, about 12.8 million new electric vehicles are expected to be registered worldwide, taking up 16% of all newly registered vehicles. For South Korea, demand in 2023 is expected to hit 200,000 vehicles. But having the right infrastructure is crucial. In South Korea, there's one charging point for every 2.6 electric vehicles. And that's far better than one charger per 7.2 vehicles in China or 15.5 EVs in Europe. However, further development of EV infrastructure is still needed for the country to boost its electric car market.
Because Koreans tend to prefer a fast-paced lifestyle, EV owners want fast chargers. The government will continue to expand the supply, and private firms are already entering this charging business. This is expected to gradually ease any inconveniences.
There is still a lack of charging infrastructure and a high risk of fire that puts people off buying EVs. Using gas stations or public facilities by relaxing regulations could be a way to establish more charging points.
Meanwhile, South Korea's environment ministry announced reformed subsidies rules that it says will increase the supply of EV infrastructure and service centers. Full subsidies will be given to buyers of cars from automakers that operate customer service centers in Korea and an online service data management system. The government has also raised the price ceiling of EV subsidies by 2 million Korean won, or roughly $1,600. As a result, vehicles under 57 million won, or around $45,000, will be able to receive the full subsidy. 신하영, Arirang News.
In line with broader efforts aimed at better protecting manual laborers, a robot has been developed to undertake potentially dangerous tasks at construction sites. Our Cho Sung-min reports.
A four-legged robot is crawling up a steel wall. It goes around any obstacles in its path and also crosses over low structures with ease. It can also walk across the ceiling hanging upside down. Developers of this robot say it can move as fast as 70 centimeters per second on a vertical wall and 50 centimeters per second when hanging on the wall. The secret to its wall-crawling ability is a special magnet and rubber material attached to the bottom of its 4 feet.
The magnetic feature must be turned on and off flexibly as its legs are taken off the ground. So we developed a magnet that can perform this function instantly.
The 8-kilogram robot can withstand a force 5 times heavier than its weight. It can also easily climb the walls carrying a load as heavy as 3 kilograms. The developers say the robots will further improve safety for workers at construction sites, replacing manual tasks in welding, inspecting structures, cleaning high poles and skyscrapers, and more. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, Korea's extreme sports survival show Physical 100 has topped Netflix charts around the world just 15 days after its release. According to streaming ratings website Flix Patrol on Thursday, the show ranked #1 on the top TV shows on Netflix chart. It was the most viewed show in 38 countries, including the UK, Canada and Australia, and has become the first Korean TV show to top the global Netflix chart. It also ranked second in Netflix's official top 10 chart, with a total of 31.3 million hours of watching time by its users. The Netflix original show features 100 contestants competing in challenges to claim a cash reward of around $237,000 US.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Brussels, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky received a positive response from some allies after he reiterated his request for fighter jets. Following the Ukrainian president's impassioned speech at the European Parliament on Thursday local time, both Slovakia and Poland have reportedly signaled their intent to send fighter jets to the war-torn country. Slovakia's Prime Minister Edward Heger reportedly told Zelensky that he could rely on Slovakia's help. That sentiment was apparently echoed by Poland's PM Mateusz Morawiecki during private meetings with Zelensky. Still, both countries will first need to receive their own orders of the US-made fighter jets before they can send their older MiG-29 aircraft. The move marks a changing stance amongst some Western allies who were previously opposed to providing Ukraine with air power. Zelensky also used his address to urge for a sped-up accession process for Ukraine to become part of the EU. Moving over to Nicaragua now, where over 200 political prisoners have been freed and flown to the United States. 220 freed prisoners arrived in Washington, D.C. on Thursday local time on a flight organized by the U.S. The prisoners were political activists and opposition figures who had planned to run against sitting President Daniel Ortega in the 2021 presidential election. Ortega had been in power there since 2007. According to a Nicaraguan judge, the prisoners had been jailed for treason. Their release follows pressure from the U.S. to free the political prisoners. Legendary pop songwriter Burt Bacharach has died at the age of 94. Bacharach passed away in Los Angeles on Wednesday, local time. He was an influential figure in the pop scene and is best known for hits like I Say a Little Prayer and Walk On By, amongst others. Some of Bacharach's best hits were written for artists like Neil Diamond and Tom Jones. He was also named the greatest living composer at the 2008 Grammys. Along with 50 chart hits in the US and UK, Bacharach won 6 Grammys, 3 Oscars, and the Gershwin Prize for Popular Song with lyricist Hal David, a longtime music partner. And finally, it's set to be a fluffy weekend as over 100 puppies are gearing up to take part in the 19th annual Puppy Bowl. Drawing inspiration from the United States Super Bowl, the Puppy Bowl will air just hours before its football counterpart. The event is meant to raise pet adoption awareness and will see the puppies play for either Team Rough or Team Fluff. The puppies come from 67 animal shelters across 34 U.S. states and the Caribbean island of Dominica. This year will also see the largest number of special needs dogs participate. The Puppy Bowl will be broadcast live on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It can be viewed on Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, TBS, Discovery Plus, and HBO Max. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Morning precipitation is letting up, but parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces are having a harsh, snowy day with a heavy snow advisory issued earlier in the day. A lingering mix of rain and snow tapering off before the evening commute, but please drive with caution today. This round of rain washed the dust away and finally brought an end to dry weather alerts in southeast regions. Also, the rain meant temperatures stay stable. Highs will be slightly lower than yesterday, but still hovering way above the norms this afternoon. So the provinces are seeing double figures under cloudy to partly sunny skies across Korea, along with normal to good air quality. A pleasant early spring-like afternoon is in the forecast tomorrow with sunnier skies. Then Sunday will be a rainy one for those in the southern provinces. Gangwon-do province looks like receive more precipitation through early next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
On that note, we end our afternoon newscast for this Friday, but do stay tuned for our panel session coming up next. See you in a bit.